ADA in the Arts, celebrating the work of disabled artists in honor of the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. A blonde woman faces us.
My name is Heidi Latsky, choreographer, artistic director of Heidi Latsky Dance in New York City. Had a physically integrated company since 2006. In 2015, for the 25th anniversary of the ADA, the MOPD commissioned me to create guerrilla art, just art to expose people to people with disabilities throughout the 5 boroughs of New York. And that was the genesis of a piece I call On Display, which was a live sculpture court where the performers are actually the sculptures and where passersby have the opportunity to get very close and intimate with all the performers / sculptures. And they can do this at their own pace and with their own sense of comfort around proximity. Since that time, the company's focus has been on disrupting space, dismantling normal, and redefining beauty and virtuosity. So during this COVID experience, the endlessly puzzling question for me has been, how do I continue to do my work that is impactful, and how do I carry out our mission, which is to shift people's perceptions around disability dance and art. This film, Solo Flight, is the first of a series of both live and virtual experiences that speak to the isolation of all of us during this pandemic. Quite literally, it was created during quarantine and then 2 weeks after the protests began, which I believe has been subliminally influential in my putting this together. Although isolation has been an underlining theme in my work from the beginning, I think COVID-19 has just served to magnify the profound feelings that surface when isolated, and also, conversely, our deep need for community. So I asked all the dancers in the film to, many months ago, some more recently, to film themselves dancing either in their homes or nearby. Some submitted new solos about a significant moment in their lives. Some submitted material from our repertory. I knew from the get-go that I wanted the footage to speak for itself, and for the performer who submitted it, that I wanted to find the essence within a very short period of time of each person and have that drive the film. And especially in these current times, I feel strongly that my role as a creator is to provide a structure that would serve as a platform for the diverse voices embodied in the film. So to have Solo Flight part of the Lincoln Center ADA30 celebration is as exciting as it is profound. To be able to share the beauty of the dancers in Solo Flight with a wide audience gives me an incredible joy and hope for the future for our art form, and I thank everyone who has made this film possible.
The image cuts to black. A bird flies straight up in stop motion, set against the gray, cloudy sky. Text reads, Solo Flight, ADA30. In black and white footage, a man in a dark sleeveless shirt with legs that end at his calves sits motionless in a long apartment hallway lined with shelves, perched on the edge of a wheelchair. His arms are spread, palms raised, and his eyes are closed. He remains serene, near motionless. In color footage, a thin woman in a gray miniskirt and dark sweater dances on a beach, backed by a gentle surf. She swings her arms and crouches low in fluid motions. In the apartment, the man in the sleeveless shirt slowly turns his head. He tips his body, pointing one hand at the floor and the other at the ceiling. On the beach, the woman continues to dance as a lone boat passes behind her. She kicks with a pointed toe, then spins and kicks again. In the apartment, the man faces us and sweeps his arms overhead in a circle. He reaches for the ceiling, then extends his hands toward us, palms open. On a near-empty sidewalk, color footage shows a man in a wheelchair facing us. He bends forward and touches the ground, then crosses his wrists and slowly sits up. He leans back with his hands crossed over his chest, then slowly opens his arms wide. On the street, cars continue to drive past him. A handsome older white woman with silver hair faces us.
This is you.
Elsewhere, also in black and white, a face stares at us, partially obscured by a smooth, shiny object. A white woman rests her head on her shoulder. In another room, a tall black man in a white t-shirt stands and stares at us. A white man with a bald head and mustache stares at us. Sitting in bed, a near-motionless white woman with one leg also stares at us. She rests her elbow on her bent knee, while behind her, a prosthetic leg in a black-heeled boot leans against the wall. In a narrow hallway, a black woman in a patterned dress faces us in her wheelchair, moving her arms in exaggerated gestures. Continuing the pattern of color footage outdoors and black and white indoors, a young Asian man in a white hat grooves in a park. Inside, the bald white man rubs his head and face. The woman in the narrow hallway presses her palms together, then raises her hands over her head. She moves her hands like waves as she lowers them to her face. She strokes her braided hair. In another room, the tall black man sweeps his arm toward us. In the park, the young man in the white cap grooves on a trail, twisting his body and limbs with fluid movements. The man on the sidewalk bends to one side and turns to face the sky. A white woman with no legs and tattoos on her back does a controlled handstand in her living room, while a wheelchair sits empty in the background. She overextends her handstand until her lower back is parallel with the floor. Outside, a white woman in blue jeans, a tank top, and a surgical mask dances between parked cars in slow motion. She points at the sky, then spins and points both hands at the street. In his apartment, the man in the sleeveless shirt leans forward in his wheelchair, staring at the floor. He points one hand at the ceiling and the other at the floor, then shifts his shoulders and switches hands. He throws his arms open, as does the tall black man. Various dancers move in their separate homes, including a pregnant white woman in a near indiscernible bikini. She rolls her hips and spins. The man in his apartment points, and the woman on the beach dances in the sand. A white woman in a flowing blouse poses before a pair of windows, and the dancer on the beach moves her arms like a rigid swimmer. In front of the windows, the woman rolls her head, whipping her long ponytail in circles. The dancer on the beach stands motionless. The silver-haired woman.
A swollen river. You probably call it the Nile.
The woman at the windows waves her arms behind her back in slow motion. She throws her arms in the air and faces the ceiling. Then crouches and pitches forward. Elsewhere, a face is partially obscured by a smooth, shiny object. In his apartment, the man in the sleeveless shirt spins in his wheelchair. Outside, a woman signs with graceful gestures. When there's a willingness to open our hearts and minds, enlighten ourselves, listen to each other's hearts, engage, kernels of knowledge. In his apartment, the man spins in his wheelchair, kicking his footless legs in the air. The woman signs, commingle, diversify, course through our beings, profound gratitude to all those before me, who instill in me, the silver-haired woman.
Borrowed time.
She turns to face us straight on. The man in the apartment takes a knee beside his wheelchair. The woman with the tattooed back slowly comes out of her handstand. Elsewhere, a white woman unfolds her body to lie back on her living room floor. The pregnant woman rolls her hips, then rolls her shoulders. She slumps forward, then stands straight and throws her arms high in the air. She continues to move with fluid grace. Outside, a bird flies across a cloudy sky. Another bird follows. The woman with one bent knee gently rocks on her bed with her eyes closed. In his apartment, the man in the sleeveless shirt sits on his overturned wheelchair, spinning on the free wheel. He gestures with his hands as he spins round and round. The spinning slows, but his gesturing doesn't stop. Continuing to spin, he holds his arms at his side, palms up, reminiscent of his initial motionless pose. The image freezes. Text appears. Musings on resilience, patience, kindness. Is this overcompensating for close-minded fragility? When folks admit, empathizing the mutual responsibility of the world upon each of us going at it solo is unnecessary. When there's a willingness to open our hearts and minds, enlighten ourselves, listen to each other's hearts, engage, kernels of knowledge commingle, diversify, course through our beings, profound gratitude to all those before me who instill in me the hopes for tomorrow. Written and signed by Alexandria Wales. A film by Heidi Latsky, commissioned by Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, featuring Sabrina Bennett, Jen Bricker-Bauer, Desmond Cadogan, Meredith Phages, Lawrence Goldhuber, Anita Hollander, Gillian Hollis, Donald Lee, Louisa Mann, Eve Packer, Anna Rubenstein, Victoria Soretsky, Tianchi Suo, Peter Troyek, Alexandria Wales. Thank you to the NYC COVID Response Impact Fund in the New York Community Trust, and to all the performers for their contributions to this film. Thank you to Jaylyn Thompson for additional footage.